welcome. This is the 24th episode of the State of Mirrorless, our ongoing series of interviews with photographers and industry experts who use mirrorless camera systems. Our guest today is calling us from faraway New Zealand, where I guess it's going to be quite cold down there. You're at the beginning of winter, just at your winter solstice. Our guest,
yes.
our guest is Andrew Gibson, which I came to know some time ago, basically following the Craft and Vision website. He wrote some ebooks for Craft and Vision, which I would recommend everyone to check out. So he's a photographer, he's a traveler, he's an author, educator, and so on. And his name, as already said, Andrew S. Gibson. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. Okay. And you're right, it's more like the middle of winter here at the moment rather than the beginning of winter.
Are you
they had
in the North
they had
Island?
minus 20.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, there's a slight delay, so I'm just getting used to it. I was just about to say they had minus 20 degrees in some parts of the South Island last night, and so it's getting pretty cold.
Are you in the North Island or the South Island?
North Island, fortunately.
Okay, that's a bit warmer.
A little bit.
And my co-host today is once again Mathieu Gasquet of Mirrorlessons.com, who has been traveling himself quite a bit recently, so we missed him. So you've been to Canada?
Yeah, I went to Canada and East Coast and stayed there for 3 weeks, and it was a nice trip. So it was a family friend trip, but also a photography trip. So we tried to mix everything together, but it was nice.
You cannot not take your camera with you.
Well, I always have a camera with me. I mean, even to go to the coffee shop down the street, you never know.
So I was saying that I got to know Andrew through his ebooks, and I'm following his blog and his newsletter. And Andrew, you recently wrote an article that caught my eye. That was about your switch from Canon to Fujifilm for your shooting. So that was like the pretext, the opportunity to have you here and talk about that switch. But before, maybe you want to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your photography career, what you do, what your specialty.
Well, I don't really have a specialty as such. I'm not a professional photographer. Some people think I am. I actually make my living writing about photography, which is something that's slightly different. And it started off, I decided that I would like to be a writer and perhaps work for a photography magazine, and I got a job as a writer with a magazine called EOS magazine in the UK, and I worked with them for a couple of years before turning freelance, and which is more or less the time I started writing ebooks as well. And so that was kind of my start, almost like an apprenticeship, but my goal has always been to write about photography rather than be a professional photographer.
Okay, so you were writing for EOS magazine, which is, I guess, all about Canon.
Yes, that's right.
As I was saying, you decided to switch to a different system. Can you tell us a bit about the reasons why you made that decision?
Yes, we have some traveling coming up later in the year. We're going to China for a month. Which is going to be very interesting. But for a while now, while I like the Canon gear, it has been a bit too heavy for me. I mean, I had an EOS 5D2. It's a wonderful camera, but to carry it around all day, even with just one lens on, it gets pretty heavy after a while. It's surprising how heavy it gets, and that was the main motivation for moving to a smaller system. So just something that's easier to carry around, take with you, whether it's just going out for the day or on a casual shoot, or whether you're away traveling. And that was kind of the goal to find a smaller camera that I could take with me when the bigger cameras were just too much.
And you also mentioned in your blog some issues with the autofocus, and which struck me as unusual, in that I just reading various forums and so on about the autofocus systems of mirrorless cameras, and Fuji in particular. It's very doesn't happen very often that somebody extols the virtues of the mirrorless autofocus systems. They tend to be maybe slower, or maybe not as precise as the corresponding systems in DSLRs. But it looks like you have a different position, a different opinion on this.
Yes, I mean, one of the frustrations that I had with the EOS 5D Mark II is that the autofocus system on it isn't very precise. It's not much good for taking photos of action photos, things that are moving, although I never really used it for that anyway. But the frustration I found with it is that when using prime lenses at an aperture of, say, f1.8, f2.8, where you don't have much depth of field, there was only really one good quality accurate autofocus point on it, and that was the center one. It has 8 other autofocus points around it. They are not cross-type autofocus points, and they struggle to focus at those wide apertures. And so another frustration with the system, you've got the size and weight on one hand, lack of precise autofocus other than the central autofocus point, led me to look for another solution. So I guess the options there are to perhaps buy something like a 5D Mark III, where they've fixed the autofocus and they've put a much more advanced autofocus system in it with a lot more cross-type AF points, so it can work. You have a lot more options when you're focusing with wide apertures, or to go for something completely different like the Fujifilm cameras. And
do you use a lot the manual focus assist tools in Fuji cameras for people who are not familiar with them? And these are systems that are also present in other brands, but when you are focusing manually, you get focus peaking, where the image, the areas of the image that are in focus are highlighted with a different color, or you get like a split screen type of autofocusing, of manual focusing assist, like in the old SLR cameras and so on. Do you use manual focus and those assist tools a lot, or do you rely mostly on autofocus?
I don't use the manual focus for my autofocus lenses. I mean, I've tried it. I have to admit, the focus peaking, I don't know whether it's me or whether it's the system itself. I don't find it as useful as some people seem to say it is, but it could just be me getting used to the system. I like the dual screen on the XT1. That's very useful, where you get the smaller screen which has the close-up of what you're manually focusing on. But the time I do use manual focus the most is I have a Helios lens, which is a manual focus lens, and I've been playing around with that a little and trying to use the focus peaking and the split screen to focus with that. But for autofocus lenses, I prefer to use the autofocus. I think that's better.
Well, actually, it's going to improve in one week from now with the new firmware update as well, implementing interesting new features. Actually, I had the chance to try the XT10, which already has the new autofocus options, and it's a very nice upgrade. So it makes the use more complete and easier sometimes, especially when you want to track a subject. But even with static subject and you don't want to rely only on one single AF point, but you prefer to have a little bit more of versatility, it's quite nice. So, I mean, they are improving a lot with firmware updates, which I find really interesting. Compared to the first firm of the XT1 1 year ago, and
So do you both think that mirrorless are catching up with DSLRs in this respect and maybe surpassing them in some aspects, or there is still a lot to be done?
Well, I guess the question is, what are you using the camera to focus on? In terms of focusing on static subjects, I like the X-T1 a lot because it's very accurate. The contrast detect system is quite accurate, whereas with SLR cameras you have to use autofocus micro adjustment to adjust the focus to get it accurate at wide apertures, and not all digital SLRs have those. It just tends to be the higher end ones that have that feature. In terms of moving subjects, which I don't really do a lot, but it would be interesting to try it out. The new autofocus coming in the firmware update on the X-T1, I mean, it does look impressive when you see the sample videos that Fuji have made showing how it works. Whether they up to the standards, you get in cameras like the 1DX or the 5D Mark III, I would say probably not, because the autofocus in those is very specialized and it's quite adaptable as well. I went to see the Canon, I forget what it's called exactly, but one of the Canon workshops in London or near London, where they do camera repairs, but also Canon professional services are based there, and they do autofocus adjustments or setups for the photographers that use that service. And so I was speaking to one of the technicians, and he explained that he develops quite a relationship with different photographers, and he gets to know the way they prefer to focus, or they will tell him how they want the camera set up. And so there's a lot of scope for adjusting the system that they have. So I don't know whether the new firmware update in the X-T1 will bring that functionality to the camera.
No, I don't think you can adjust doing micro adjust that you can do on certain DSLRs, but basically for me the new firmware just brings more versatility, especially when you're tracking a subject. Before, because I used the X-T1 for some sports photography last year, and I actually found it was working really well. But the best way to achieve good result was to use the single f point, make it as larger as possible, and keep it at the center, because that's where the phase detection area is. So it worked well, but you had to really be precise in tracking your subject, because if your subject will move away from the single f point, then the camera will start to focus on the background. With the new f system, the camera can use multiple points and track your subject. So even if you're not exactly precise in following a marathon man or whatever subject you're tracking, the camera will help you keep it in focus. So it's not the speed that's surprising me, it's more the fact that you can now work a little bit better as you do with DSLRs, because DSLR can as well track a subject with different f point that have 3D tracking, and the X-T1 will have 3D tracking as well. So it's interesting. I mean, about your question, Ugo, I mean, I think that Fuji and mirrorless cameras in general are catching up with DSLR regarding autofocus. As Andrew said, the high-end models from both Canon and Nikon probably are still better, because they're especially designed for professional that, for example, shoot sports every day. But Fuji is doing a lot of improvements. Also, the mirrorless brand, I can think of Panasonic, Sony, Olympus, have now a very reliable autofocus system, and there are actually more and more photographers that are starting using cameras for professional assignment as well. I mean, I published a month ago an article that listed 10 photographers that were using mirrorless camera for sports, and we specifically look for people that were shooting professionally for magazines or newspapers or agencies, just to really hear feedback from someone that maybe up to 2 years ago was using a DSLR, and then started to use also mirrorless cameras. And there were quite a few interesting thoughts in there. I mean, many mentioned the fact that with an optical viewfinder, for example, you don't have the time lag that an electronic viewfinder can have, and that with sports can be a bit more difficult. Even if now the new viewfinder, the new electronic viewfinder are becoming really, really good with very short time lag, with lots of resolution. They are bigger. I mean, the X-T1 viewfinder is amazing, for example. The one on the new A7R Mark II is very good as well. So, I mean, I think it's a mix of different things that are closing the gap step by step. But I think that probably in 2 years from now, I would say that probably mirrorless camera will be as good as DSLRs.
I will just add one more point about this, and then we'll stop talking about autofocus. We don't want the whole show to be about autofocus, but I was just yesterday reading Tom Hogan's site, Sans Mirror, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, and he had this article about why do people really buy mirrorless cameras, and one of the points was better autofocus, and he was actually explaining that for most people who are not into shooting sports, for instance, they mostly will shoot static subjects. They will shoot Aunt Betty on the rim of the Grand Canyon, and for them having an accurate autofocus so that Aunt Betty will be sharp instead of some random tree or rock in the background is much more important than fast tracking. So it's probably, and DSLR autofocus systems in the top level cameras are pretty complex beasts. They have tens of different modes. So for most people, it's not such a matter of better autofocus, but of more usable autofocus, at least according to Tom Hogan.
Right, it's a good point. I agree. I mean, you grab whatever Lumix Panasonic cameras, for example. I mean, even the last G7, and the autofocus will never miss one single shot. And we're talking a conscious detection system only. For example, what they achieve with that, it's amazing. Actually, the GH4, G7 probably is among the best, and it's just conscious detection, and they don't have 400 different f points. But yeah, when you aim and shoot, it's always lock right. And so for someone that just looking to take some family shots, or just travel and normal stuff that most people want to shoot, these cameras are really good. I agree with that.
All right, so let's move on. What I would like to ask you, Andrew, is what's in your bag nowadays? What do you typically carry with you when you go on a shoot, when you go on travel? Are you into zooms or primes? What are your preferred lenses? And a bit of this, if you want to let us know.
Well, I have two cameras which I use at the moment, the X-T1 and the X Pro 1. So the X Pro 1 was the first mirrorless camera that I bought, but that's become my backup camera. Now I use the X-T1 for most of my shooting. So I have the 56mm f1.2, the 35mm f1.4, an 18mm f2 pancake, and the 14mm f2.8, I think it is. So definitely primes.
So you don't use zooms? Is that a aesthetic choice? You like wide apertures? What is the reason behind that particular choice?
Yes, I do like wide apertures. For many years before I bought a digital camera, when I was using film cameras, I had just two lenses, a 24mm lens and a 50mm lens, and I was really happy with those. I remember traveling around South America, and I had two small Pentax camera bodies, a 24mm lens on one, a 50mm lens on the other, and I was really happy. So I really do like the simple approach to photography. Not too many lenses, not too much equipment, just keep the decision-making process as simple as possible and just get on with the job of looking for photos, learning to see, and just getting out there and finding the interesting things to take photos of.
And in this case, you would just carry one camera across your neck with one lens, or you would use maybe the backup one with another lens mounted close to your hand at all times, or it tends to stay in the bag?
It tends to stay in the bag. I just really tend to have one camera ready to go. I've never really tried having two, like you see people having two cameras ready to hand so that they can swap from one to the other. I've never really tried that.
And in terms of light, are you more into natural light, or do you use flash at all?
Definitely natural light.
Yeah. I remember you have an ebook about taking portraits with natural light.
That's right, yes. Now, I think this comes down to my liking to keep things simple. I know you can keep things relatively simple if you're using flash by just having one flash unit, but I enjoy using natural light. It has a nice quality which I like, and I really like the idea of, especially when it comes to portraits, just being able to do it with minimal equipment. Often when I do a portrait shoot, I will just have one camera and one lens, so it would be the 56mm f1.2 on the X-T1, and a reflector, and I really like the freedom that gives me.
Yeah, I did a lot of portrait shoots with the X-T1 56 and just a reflector as well, and I like the you have the minimal setup you need, and it works quite well. And actually, the X-T1 and the 56 is a terrific combo for portraits, in my opinion. And the file, you can really work the file as you want to open shadows and make all the adjustment you want, and it's very good with skin tones as well. So yeah, I enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, I was using flash more in the past, and now I'm relying more on natural light. One of the reasons is that I like to use flash off camera. I hate the look of on-axis flash. It tends to really make everything look flat and ugly, but I love off-camera flash at times. I was using it less and less just because the triggers I was using to command my flashes remotely were just fine in terms of size for a DSLR, but a bit too large for my mirrorless. But I just ordered the other day. There was an offer, a discount on these Flash Q thingies, which are new radio triggers, which are very small. It's just a small cube that goes onto your hot shoe. And it's more because instead of using the typical AAA batteries to power them, they have one of those, how do you call them, button batteries. So they're very small. I'm waiting for them to be delivered and test them and see if I can start picking up my flashes more often now. We'll see. All right. Anyway, we briefly mentioned an ebook that you wrote, Andrew. You wrote a lot of ebooks. Do you really, as you said, you're a professional writer? Is that your career of choice nowadays, right? Can you tell us a bit about ebooks? What topics do they cover, and where can people find them if they want to know more?
Okay, well, I've written over 20 ebooks so far, which I guess is quite a few. It surprises me when I think about it, just how many that I've written. You can find some of them at Craft and Vision, so that's craftandvision.com. But the more recent ones I've written and said on my own website, so that's andrewsgibson.com. Now they cover topics, well, quite a variety of topics, I guess. There's black and white photography, there's portraits using natural light, like you mentioned just now, close-up photography, those are all on Craft and Vision. And for my own website, I've been writing about Canon cameras, That's before I made the switch to Fuji, so they've been on there for a while now, but they're quite comprehensive. Composition, my latest ebook is called Mastering Composition, and also Lightroom, and they've been quite popular. I've got a series of 5 ebooks about Lightroom.
Are you now planning to write any books about Fuji cameras?
Good question. I don't think so, because in the early days when I started off writing and selling ebooks on my own website, EOS magazine were helping me out by promoting it both on their website and in their newsletter. So they were very much targeted at that Canon audience, people that knew me from the magazine, because my name was quite prominent in the magazine, and so that helped get me going in the early days. But as my audience has expanded, now I think I need to write books which are more general, and so anybody can read a book no matter which camera they have. And I guess the other thing is, with Canon, I know the full range very well because we had them all in the office at the magazine, so I was able to use a variety of different cameras and lenses. With Fuji, I've only used the X Pro 1 and the XT 1, so I don't really have an in-depth knowledge of the whole range, so I think that holds me back there. And plus, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but there's a writer called Ricoh who's written quite a few books for Fuji cameras, and I think he's kind of leading the way at the moment. Quite difficult to write something that competes with his depth of knowledge and experience of Fujifilm cameras.
Well, he definitely has a very deep knowledge about Fujifilm cameras, and you can test all of them before they actually release. So it's I thought he wrote an in-depth book about the XT2, for example, and this is another one coming out of the X cameras. So.
And does it take a lot of effort to produce an ebook? Is it something that you do on your own, from conception to writing to layout and publishing?
Yes, I do it all on my own, which is something I quite enjoy. I guess one day in the future it would be nice to have a graphic designer to do the layout for me, but I have to admit I quite enjoy doing the layout. It does take quite a while to write the ebooks, because the ones I'm writing at the moment, the Lightroom ones, which I've been working on for the last year or so, they're between about 130 and 230 pages long, so there's quite a lot of work that goes into each one.
That's quite an undertaking. I mean, I was thinking they would be a bit thinner, but 140 or 200 pages, it's a lot of content. So I guess it's good for people who want to buy them. It's a good price to quality ratio, getting so much information for a relatively cheap price. I think the ebook and self-publishing ebook industry is really turning the world of photography book publishing on its head at the moment.
Yes, now I write long ebooks like that, I think partly because I mean, I doubt you've ever read an issue, but EOS magazine is quite a comprehensive magazine. We write detailed articles in there, and we really go into depth. We're not like some photography magazines which just tend to not go into things in very much depth and just touch on things lightly. We used to go into great detail, and I guess that's something I've just carried over. I really want to write something that's comprehensive and useful to people. I read books by people like Scott Kelby and Pete Van den Einde, who I think probably write some of the best books about Lightroom around, and I want to write something that's on the same level or hopefully even better. So that's my aim. And so you need to be quite comprehensive when you set yourself a goal like that.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I see in your books, it's aside from the writing and the information contained in the photos, they are just gorgeous. I mean, there are many ebooks out there where they might contain good information and so on, but the photos are just maybe so and so. And in your case, if I may say so, the photography that illustrates the book is just great. So that's why I was thinking that you were first of all a photographer and then a writer, because your photography, I really appreciate it a lot.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. And really, I am a photographer. I'm not a professional photographer, but I am a photographer. And it really is, for me, photography first and writing about it a very close second. The two go together.
Sure. And you're also a traveler. And I think you say you have traveled to, well, you have photographed actually over 60 countries.
That's correct, yes.
I would like to ask you, what is your favorite country to photograph, and what's the next country you're going to be, or maybe one that you would like to go to and you've never been to or you're planning to go to?
Some good questions. The next one we're going to is China. So that's coming up in August, and so we're going to spend a month there traveling between Shanghai, Beijing, Hangzhou and Xi'an. So that should be really interesting. Favorite country that I've ever been to take photos in, I guess Argentina would certainly be up there because they have such a wide variety of scenery. I really do like most of South America, to be honest. I mean, it's hard to say because there's just so many beautiful photogenic places around the world. Now, somewhere where I haven't been to, that I would like to take photos in, I guess Romania would be a very interesting destination. I have friends that live there, and I've seen photos by photographers like Mitchell Kanashkovich, which I like a lot, and I think there's plenty of interesting things to take photos of there. Iceland, I've seen a lot of beautiful photos taken in Iceland. I mean, I've been there, but I haven't been there to take photos of the landscapes. West coast of Scotland is another area where I've seen a lot of photos. There's a photographer called Bruce Percy, who I'm a big fan of, and he's got some beautiful photos taken there. And some of the national parks in the United States as well, which I've never had a chance to go to, would be very beautiful, like the ones they have in the southwest in the desert, and some of the others as well. I think would be amazing places to go and visit and spend a little time with your camera.
Oh, by the way, since you mentioned Scotland, I will just do a little plug for an event that we are holding there in September. That will be the so-called Google Plus Euro Photo Walk, and we're going to spend a couple days, probably more, in and around Glasgow on September 18 and 19. So if people want to know more, and if people are close there and want to join us, it's a free event, open to all. Just get in touch with me, send me a comment. I will send you all the details about this. It's going to be a group of people we met on Google Plus. We've been to Donegal in Ireland last year. We've been to Dorset in the south of England, and this year we are going to Scotland. So I'm looking forward to it. I've never been there myself. What else, Mathieu?
Well, I haven't traveled that much to really pick one of my favorite country to take photos in, and I would love to travel more. That's one of actually our aim in the future. But I mean, maybe I can start for now. I love landscapes. I love landscapes in Scotland, Wales. Actually, I moved to Wales also for the reason that I really like the country. I really like taking photos there. I mean, I still want to visit. There's still a lot of countries on my list that I want to visit, different continents. So I guess that maybe in the next couple of years.
And Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but your accent doesn't sound Kiwi. So I guess maybe New Zealand was one of your destinations that you wanted to go through and move there, or am I wrong?
No, you're right. I'm from the UK originally. Actually grew up in Australia, and now living in New Zealand for the time being. My wife is from New Zealand.
I see. Okay, good. Just we're about to close this. I just would like Andrew, if you have anything to add or want to know where people can find you, what's the best way to keep updated with all that you are doing, with any new ebooks that you might be releasing, and so on?
Mm-hmm. The best way is just to go to my website and sign up for my email newsletter. You'll get a couple of free ebooks if you do, and I send out a newsletter once or twice a month, and all the news and latest blog articles and extra things that don't go on the website in the newsletter.
Yeah, and I'm a subscriber myself, so I can attest to that it's a lot of interesting content there. Okay, so thanks for being with us. Mathieu, any parting words from you?
Thank you for this chat. It was really interesting, and I'll subscribe to the newsletter myself so that I can keep with your updates and next photos and ebook. I'll do that. It would be nice. And thank you for nice chat. And as usual, people can find me on mirrorless.com and all the related social networks. Ambulance.
So an ambulance just went by here.
That was precise at the end of my sentence, so it was quite well timed.
I apologize for that, but it's summer here. I've got the window open, so all the noise that's coming from the street, it's getting picked up and this was really loud. Anyway, so thanks for being with us today, Andrew and Mathieu, and let's keep in touch.
Right. Okay.
Cheers. Bye.
Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.